Water wheels draw force from adjacent water currents. The more faces are powered, the faster the water wheel will rotate. The wheel's blade should be oriented against the flow of water. When facing the opposite way, they will not be as effective. Let's go over the crafting recipe to create the water wheel and how we can use it to power our Minecraft Create Mod contraptions. We'll also look at ways we can power the water wheel without using water. To get started, let's grab our goggles and our wrench. The first thing we're going to need is an Anacyte Alloy, which consists of 2 Anacyte and 2 iron nuggets. We just put them diagonally like this to form a cube and we get Anacyte Alloy. Also, if we have a mixer around, we can combine one of each for a cheaper recipe. And we right click to get it back. The next thing we're going to need to craft is a large cog wheel, which consists of an Anacyte alloy in the middle, 4 planks, and 4 buttons. Andesite in the middle, planks on the ends, and buttons in the corner. Large cog wheels. Nice. Now we can take this large cog wheel and combine it with slabs to create our water wheel. Now we get a water wheel. And note that it says kinetic stress capacity 16 times RPM. We're going to get to that in a minute, but just keep that in mind. So now we can place it down, and it places it just like this. Now when we wear our goggles, it tells us the kinetic stress capacity of the water wheel. It says 128 SU at current speed, and that stands for 128 stress units. Now, this is only 128 because we have water running across one side of the water wheel. So what happens if we have water on 2 sides of the water wheel, the top and this left side? Then we end up with 192 stress units. So what if we just let the water run across the bottom? Well, then we end up with 256 stress units, having a source block in the top right, running across the top, down the side, and across the bottom. You'll notice that the water wheel edges are catching the water in sort of like a shovel fashion. We can also achieve 256 stress units with water on 3 sides using soul sand. If we put soul sand in the bottom, and we have water source blocks on this whole side, water running across the top, and water coming down on the other side, we get 256 stress units. In this example, the water is pushing the water wheel the opposite way. See how the angled edges of the water wheel are not getting cupped by water, instead they're just kind of pushing over the edges slowly, and we end up with 160 stress units. In the Create mod is a bucket of chocolate, which means we can have a source block of chocolate, and the chocolate can flow across all 3 sides of the water wheel, generating 256 stress units. We can also use honey as a liquid in the Create mod and have a source block of honey, and it flows around powering our water wheel. While milk is not an item that we can pour out of a bucket, I tried putting it into this fluid container and pumping it up here to form a source block, but unfortunately that doesn't work. So milk is either in a container or in a bucket of some kind. What we can do is also use lava to power our water wheel, and we even get an achievement. While lava moves slower than water, it generates the same amount of power, 256 stress units. Instead of powering a water wheel on only 3 sides, we can power a water wheel on 4 sides and generate even more stress units, 320 to be exact. We can put a soul sand in this bottom corner, place 2 water sources, and have the water flow across the top, down the other side, and across the bottom. This ensures that water is flowing on all 4 sides. We can also rotate the water wheel and place it on the ground like this and still achieve the same thing. We have a water source block here, and it pushes it all the way around 3 sides. Now with our wrench, if we just click it, nothing happens, right? If we shift and click, we can pick up the item into our inventory, so we don't have to go chasing after it. If we look at the side of the block and we right click, it rotates the item, and if we click it again, you'll notice that the angled brackets on the top are now pointed the opposite way, so they're pointed to the left, and if we click it twice more, now they're pointed to the right. So if you have your water source here, you would leave it like this, but if your water source was over here, you can just click it twice, and now it would be maximum efficiency because the water would be caught in these little grooves right here and give it more rotational stress capacity. For this cuckoo clock, it says 1 times RPM. So if we use this gauge information here, and we have a water wheel with 3 sides of water, and it's cupping the water as it's going around, so we get 256, right? So we get 256 stress units and at a rotational speed of 16 RPM. This is without changing anything at all and having water on 3 sides. Now, if we add this cuckoo clock at 1 times, it's going to be 1 times the rotational speed, which is 16. So that means that we're going to use 16 stress units for this cuckoo clock. So 256 minus 16 is 240 stress units. So that's how many stress units we have left after attaching this cuckoo clock to this water wheel. So let's look at another item that we can attach. So the mechanical press says 8 times RPMs. So 8 times 16, because the water wheel is rotating at 16 RPMs, is 128 stress units. So we end up with 128 stress units required to attach this mechanical press. So 8 times the rotational speed of 16 is 128. So this 256, when we attach it, it's going to use 128 stress units and leave us with 128 stress units left, which means we're using 50% of the available stress units. Now the speed isn't changing at all because the water wheel is rotating at one consistent speed, 16 RPMs. Now we can change that speed here in the next example. So if we go a large cog wheel to a small cog wheel, you'll notice that the small cog wheel is actually rotating twice as fast as the large cog wheel. This is one way we can boost our speed without changing the stress units, right? The water wheel is still generating the same amount of stress, and it's spinning at the same speed, but using a large cog wheel to a cog wheel, we can generate twice as much speed, right? So here on the speed gauge, we get 32 RPMs, which is double 16, and we still have 256 stress units. So our stress unit hasn't changed because we just have one water wheel, but our speed has doubled. So what does this mean? Well, now it's 8 times the rotation speed, right? Because that's what it says for mechanical presses. 8 times 32 is 256. So now we're using all 256 stress units generated from this one water wheel to power this mechanical press. So why would you want to even power this mechanical press with the whole 256 stress units when you could easily do it with 128 stress units over here? Well, that's where the speed comes into play. So if I throw an item here, we can watch it getting pressed. Now, what if I throw an item over here? That's actually way faster, right? And we'll watch this one again. It seems excruciatingly slow now that we saw the fast one. Right, so depending on what item you're going to attach to your power source, like the water wheel, and at what speed you're attaching it can play a factor in how fast the item performs. The rotational speed influences how fast the contraptions work that are attached to your power source, like a water wheel. You can have it at 1 times speed, so it's 16 RPMs times the RPMs of the device itself, which is 8, gives you 128 stress units. But the speed is still the same, right? Or we can double the speed and use all our stress units and go twice as fast. I hope you found this video helpful, and until next time, have a good one.